This video is not about bringing your whole self to work because I don't believe you have a whole self. It's also inspired by the work that I've been doing with my coach on putting forward who I really am on LinkedIn and how to attract my people, how to create my personal brand maybe, but more so how do I look at my LinkedIn profile, looked at the things I've posted there and feel like it authentically represents me and what I want LinkedIn to see. So LinkedIn has become sort of this virtual networking event that's 24/7, right? It started as a website for searching for jobs, and LinkedIn has done a lot of work to become more of a social media platform, even integrating video recently. But because it's rooted around this idea of professionalism, we put our best foot forward. We're wearing very specific types of clothing. Our hair has to be done a certain way, like curly girls, I'm sorry. We need to leave anything too unique about us at the door. It's about presenting a version of ourselves that is neutral, that is corporate, that is safe. And ultimately, we want to be hirable. But the truth that I think a lot of us are facing right now, given that this is not a drill, that we are seeing insane corporate power and oligarchic reconstruction of the United States, I think we all see that either that wins or we build an alternative system, an alternative world, an alternative economy that's built on more authenticity and not less. So the things that make us special, like the way that we help colleagues solve problems, the ways that we break the ice, the ways that we lead or collaborate or create or make people laugh, the way that we might alchemize stress, the way that we might make space for people at work to talk about world events. All of those things that we are at work, they are tied to other parts of ourselves, right? They're tied to other traits or interests that are unique that make us who we are. And those are the things that we often hide from LinkedIn, and we just don't want to be there. Let's start with 2 ground rules before we get into this, okay? So the first one, ground rule number 1, you are in complete control of how much you disclose on LinkedIn. How much you disclose to your workplace, to your colleagues, that should always be in your complete control. Your level of comfort may ebb and flow with your mood, with the thing that it is, with things that are going on in your personal life. You also might have a really inclusive workplace or a really restrictive one. You'll also probably notice that if you become a people manager or a leader, you have to rethink what parts of yourself you disclose. But as you'll see from sort of the tips that I want to share with you is that this is really about being in control of that in a conscious way. You cannot decide how much of yourself you're sharing and not sharing if you're not taking inventory of all those versions of yourself, if you're not self-aware about all the things that are going on, both in and outside of work. Distractions, interests, ideas. Self-awareness should be your starting point at all times. The second ground rule that I want to state is the one I led this video with, which is that I don't believe that you have a whole self to bring to work. I think authenticity is kind of a mixed bag. The version of myself that shows up to my kids' PTA meetings and the version of myself that actually is the mom to my child are different. The version of myself that sort of is kissing ass to a manager I don't like is different from the version of myself that's negotiating a job offer. The version of myself that my husband gets versus the version of myself that I am in private when I'm all alone are all different people, but they're all authentically me. They're all expressions of myself in those roles, in those contexts, in those moments, in those responsibilities. They are versions of who I authentically am and how I show up to those things. And that's kind of where I think LinkedIn becomes tricky because it is so sanitized, we could say, that it's hard to know what version of yourself you should be bringing to that table. So in that spirit, hi, I'm Bree. I'm a startup product manager and marketer. I'm also a tarot reader. Everything I do is heavily influenced by my eco-pagan ethics. I'm also a recovering workaholic, and my thing is solving problems with teams. I love making things happen. I love setting up other people for success, and that's sort of the same motivation that inspired me to turn this YouTube channel into a place where I can help you. I want to help you self-actualize your career, your business, and help you have your successes. So let's get into my three-step plan for showing up authentically on LinkedIn. Step 1, let's decolonize the word professionalism. We need to define professionalism from our own inner wisdom because it is a very colonized word. The word professional was not invented to capture the identities or behaviors or thinking styles or perspectives of most people. Not women, not queer people, not people with black or brown skin, not indigenous people, not disabled people, especially not working class or impoverished people. All of these different labels were never meant to be under the professional umbrella. It was invented for a very specific idea, a specific way of thinking that's very hierarchical, very domineering. And this is where the feeling of needing to shrink ourselves or fit into a different mold really starts to come from. Is that LinkedIn is this constant virtual networking event that is the sanitized idea of professional. And you have all these people showing up trying to fit into something that will just never fit. Something to consider is that, a lot of these companies ending DEI programs, or Zuckerberg saying that we're going to, have more masculine energy in the workplace. These sorts of things are evidence that that stuff was not what they wanted in the first place. Okay, we need to accept that companies and organizations and the professional class, the executive class, does have a chip on their shoulder for divergence and for difference and for being outside the box. Often they really like what you can do to make them money, but they don't actually like you. And it is very hard to accept your own inner wisdom and your own multidimensional self in full and reconcile that with the fact that you're making someone like that money and making them a profit. And I think that's one of the reasons we actively deny learning more about ourselves and learning how to bring ourselves to LinkedIn, is because it is uncomfortable to see that divide, to bridge that gap. So to deal with this, I really want you to think about workplaces where you have gotten comfortable, okay? You've been there, your first 90 days might be up, you've started to find your friends at work, you have the leaders and managers that you vibe with. Once you feel secure in a workplace, have you noticed that you just start to bloom a bit differently? Your personality comes out. You might take more leadership opportunities. You might get more creative with problem solving, or you might get a little bit more, willing to break the rules. Maybe you're willing to start conversations on tough issues. Maybe you're not afraid to talk to the colleague who is grieving a death in the family. The challenge that I want to propose to you is that version of yourself that has relaxed into a workplace is probably the version that should be on LinkedIn. That's the version that people remember. That's the version of you that people are attached to, build bonds with, trust, give projects to, promote. The cost of hiding those qualities of yourself means that you're missing out on connections, mentors, and companies who will value those aspects of you. So with that in mind, let's go to tip 2, which is tempered blending. So like I said earlier, we have lots of different authentic selves. We are multifaceted, we're multidimensional, paradimensional, you might say. You need to take an active role in the self-discovery journey of having a constant inventory of those selves, where your boundaries are, what you do and don't want to show up at work with. And part of that is keeping an inventory of the parts of yourself that you very much don't want to have at work, and then you probably don't want to have on LinkedIn. So this one is an exercise. I want you to make a list of the stuff that's not on your resume. Weird jobs that you've had, life events that maybe took you out of the workforce for a little while, things that you did during that time, unseen labor that you've done, weird hobbies that you've pursued, zines you've started, clubs that you tried to get going, businesses you started that failed, maybe a blog that you wrote. What would it look like if LinkedIn saw those sewing projects, those volunteer hours? I want you to consider this because determining what it is that you want to bring forward in your professional persona, in this version of you, is also going to determine what sorts of opportunities are then attracted back to you. If you want to attract more design opportunities, you need to show that you're trying in design. There is an alchemical process of constructing your career or constructing your business or constructing your network that takes place by proactively sharing with the world the things that make you you, the things that you're excited about, the things that you want to do, or the things that you're trying to learn. Please sit down and write these things out and determine which ones, if they had a place on LinkedIn, what would that look like for you? Tip number 3 is to build your courage in sharing these gifts. Now, I do want to frame that just like our whole self isn't real, having the courage to show up fully on LinkedIn is also not really a real thing. It's going to be a journey. It's going to take practice. It takes time to build bravery to follow our passions, to be seen trying, to be seen failing. It is hard to go from being an employee to a leader to an entrepreneur, back to being an employee again. But all of that stuff is made up. Okay, this comes back to that idea of decolonizing professionalism. Really, you need to think about what are my skills, what are my gifts, what are my interests, and how am I contributing to the world? Sometimes that is going to be as an employee, Sometimes it's going to be as a volunteer. Sometimes it's going to be as an entrepreneur or a business owner. And other times you're going to contribute just by interacting with other people on LinkedIn, people who do the kinds of things that you're interested in. I had the opportunity to do a PhD in anthropology a few years ago, fully funded, and the same time I was offered that placement, I was also offered a promotion to lead product at a startup in the UK. I had to make a choice, and I still remember sitting on the living room floor in my husband's arms, crying my eyes out because I chose the job. I was crying because I was grieving the version of myself that I knew I was choosing to let die. The academic, the one who is going to be doing field research, who is going to spend 2 or 3 years just studying Japanese arts with artisans out in the mountains and getting really good at that specialty Japanese. I thought that was my destiny. I thought that was my dream, and I chose the job. At the time, I thought I chose the job because it was more practical, but actually it scared me more. I wanted to have the courage to see it through. I wanted to test myself. I had to make my own time is right moment, and the time for trying that was then. But that PhD offer, that version of myself that I never got to actualize, she's still there in the ether, right? She still floats around me. She's still subscribed to all of those journals, and on LinkedIn, that means I follow a lot of anthropologists and design researchers. My feed is over 50% people in this field, and I learned so much from them. And I get to apply those things that I'm interested in to my work. In the same way that I get to apply all of my studies in tarot and in eco-paganism and sacred ecology, I get to apply those ethics and those worldviews to my job. You can curate your feed and interact with people who share your interests, values, or unpursued passions, and this creates more depth to your experience on LinkedIn and encourages you to show up with depth as well. Let us get to know you. Share your stories, share your interests, and share your failures. Those are a few of my tips, and to summarize, the future that we're going to build together, the world, the businesses we're going to build, the systems that we're going to build, the economies of care that we're going to build are going to require authenticity. They're going to require you to be brave, to show up, to call things out. They're also going to require firm boundaries. So honor the boundaries that you want to set around what LinkedIn looks like for you, and know that a lot of your unique qualities and niche interests are assets. They're going to be assets to your persona, your brand, your business that you want to start, but they're also assets to a company who might want that kind of energy and that out-of-the-box thinking in their team. And they're assets to you and your development as the fully actualized version of yourself that you want to be in this life. Building your own authenticity is a journey. It is constructive. It is co-created. It's not a destination. And LinkedIn is a really icky, corporate, gray, sad space. And I think that we can change it for the better and not let these crazy people own that platform. That's our pep talk for this Monday. Have a great week at work, and I will see you next Monday. Toodles.